Okay, welcome everyone to this TMS session. Let me thank Professor Giovanni De Gasperis for the today webinar and briefly introduce him. Professor Giovanni De Gasperis had his master's degree in electronics engineer here at the University of L'Aquila with a thesis about neural networks in automatic control and a PhD in electronics engineer with the title of Microfabrication for the Electrophoresis on Living Cells. In 1995, he was a visiting scientist at UTMD Henderson Cancer Center in Houston, where he also did a postdoctoral fellow from the 1996 and 1998. Between 1998 and 2006, he worked as an independent software engineer consultant in Italy, and at the same time, he had a contract lecture of computer engineer at the University of L'Aquila. And in 2007, he achieved the role of research assistant of computer engineer. In 2011, he became adjunct professor and senior researcher of computer engineer. And from the following year, he became tenured professor of intelligent systems and robotic laboratory course at the master degree of computer science, of course, here in L'Aquila. Between 2011 and 2019, he had some experiences like visiting professor, one in University of Salamanca, University of Westminster, and University in Tbilisi. And today he is here for us in order to present a webinar whose title is Can Large Language Models Be Used in Science? So thank you again, Professor De Gasperi, to be here, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chiara. Thank you, and then good morning to everybody to attending this webinar. I'm going to share my screen and start the presentation. So the title, Can Large Language Model Be Used in Science, is a question. Subtitle, Application of Large Language Model in Non-Linguistic Scientific Domains. Since it's a language model, so even if linguistic is a human science, but we're not talking now today about linguistics. We are going to talk about sciences, okay? But first, maybe we should make a clear idea, I hope, even if the time is not so much, to try to understand what they are. So let's see some definitions. Well, advanced AI system for understanding and generating human language? Yes. Language processing powerhouse, high capacity model for comprehending, quote, and generating text. Okay, artificial neural network based language model built on deep neural network for capturing linguistic patterns. Well, interesting. Versatile AI tool, artificial intelligence tool, flexible tool applicable to diverse domain, leveraging language understanding, quote, and generation. But definitely in the field of natural language processing, so far they are the best in the field. Well, many scientists just define them as a statistical parrot. That's why we have this this nice colored parrot picture here. Yes, because basically these systems, these models have been trained on all the text that humanity created since the beginning of printing or anything else, and that is published and available on the internet. And also a lot of humans were involved in making precise text generation according to some guidelines. It's a long story. So let's try to do a little bit of history to understand where they come from. Definitely in the 90s, there was this first model called the hidden Markov model, which is very much used in many fields of science, where basically you have to predict the probability of a symbol or a phenomena or an event based on previous events or previous phenomena. So it's probability related to previous probability events, right? So there is a lot of mathematics and the probability theory that is accompanying this very complex model. But they kind of had many limitations on generability, the generalization of concepts, and they very much focused on specific domains. So this is also very common in artificial intelligence. This law of interest kind of period, they are called AI winters, where people were no more interested in such kind of research, or less people were interested. Well, I never actually left the field since I graduated in '91 with neural network. I was fascinating, also with logic programming. Since then, so I was because I'm from L'Aquila, so I can live in the winter very well. Next, we jump to the 2000s. There start to appear new natural language model, as there is some spelling here, based on neural networks. Mostly neural networks that are processing a sequence of symbols, which are letters or words. And so the activation of an artificial neuron is not dependent just from its current input, but also from past values and other neurons that are in sequence. And so these models started to behave better than hidden marker models. And so a new interest started to be around this kind of artificial neural network models. Interesting enough, after 13 years, this interesting concept came in, which is the word embedding. I should have another webinar on this, but basically words are become to be represented as vectors in a multidimensional space. So we're talking about matrices. We are talking about vector as in physics. Okay, for example, a word like home could be represented in a 1,000 dimension space. Why 1,000? Why so large dimensional spaces? Well, basically because the words are determined by their context, where those words are being used together with other words that are preceding the current word and that will follow this word. So this word2vec was a very good algorithm that was introduced in the 2013, and you can here visualize a little bit. It's like you have a vector of king. This is a two-dimensional, okay, very simplified visualization. Otherwise, because we cannot visualize more than probably 3 dimensions. So in 2D, we have a representation of the vector of king, and then we have a representation of the vector of queen, which is another place, just different components. Well, the property of the word embedding is that if I, from the vector of king, I subtract numerically the vector of man, male figure, what I actually obtain, is a parallel direction. In a parallel direction, I obtain the vector of a woman. So that's very interesting, right? Because it looks like this algorithm can elaborate some semantic, but it's not actually semantic. It's just a context-related vector representation. And then if I add the royalty to a woman, I will get a queen, which is then has the same distance to the king as a woman has to the man. So this is a very simplified explanation, and it's a long, I actually like very much this approach, because for the first time, words were not represented just as a string of characters. And so introduces a lot of tools that are mostly used in physics, in engineering, that allowed to make complex numerical calculation with words, with text. And in 2017, there was another publication that was introduced the transformer model, which basically encode a sequence in the input stage that then will be generating a new sequence at the output. So it's a sequence-to-sequence model done by submodules, and each module can do a specific task. Mostly RNN stays for recurrent neural networks. And so specifically posing this subneural network in this kind of a sequence, they can actually learn a sequence-to-sequence transformer, okay? So you can imagine like a sequence of words can be transformed to a sequence of colors, or a sequence of numbers, or a sequence of any other symbol. And this was another major scientific innovation in computer science in order to achieve what is going next, which is the generative pre-trained transformer, which is a specific transformer introduced in 2018, actually from Google. But then the overall natural language processing community started to study on them. So it's a much more complex neural network structure. Each one of these boxes is a complex neural network. 12x means this is a deep learning, has 12 times the number of layers. And so you may have heard about this keyword, deep learning, right? Because there are so many layers of artificial neural networks, so increasing the overall number of parameters. And definitely GTP1, 2, they started to have billions of parameters, a lot, up to 2022, where ChatGPT showed up from OpenAI. And it was based on GPT-3 and 3.5. Nowadays, they are working on GTP-4. And now we got the explosion. Everybody wants to use it. There is a huge hype. You name it. Everyone is using even just a coffee machine. They say, okay, this has an artificial intelligence. I can talk to a coffee machine. So we should instead be more precise and trying to understand what they are, what kind of application you can use for. But our webinar today is not going to be about linguistics, right? So first of all, let's remember some potential risk, because before we go into science, we need to have this disclaimer. Well, there are a lot of problems, as you can tell. Bias and accuracy. Let's read the title first. Amplification of biases, ethical and privacy concerns, spread of misinformation, lack of contextual understanding, unintended consequences, loss of human expertise, energy consumption, and environmental impact. Each one of these may require a separated webinar, right? Well, let me tell you that there are people working on research about these problems. So the ethic of artificial intelligence, of large language models, and all of the related products that are being derived from this technology. Just let's read some of this. For example, the bias. The bias is very, very important. LLMs can generate bias or inaccurate outputs due to the bias present in the training data, potentially perpetuating societal biases or misinformation. Consider that there was an example about face recognition in a building in the US, where it was installed in a building where many families were living. And basically, this was sold as a very new technology that look at your face, recognize yourself, and open the door. So you don't need the key anymore, right? Your face is your password. It's a new slogan. Well, it worked only for those white people, male and middle-aged inhabitants of that building. If you were a black woman, you could not enter the building because the data set was extremely biased. There were many examples of a typical white male American stereotype that there was a very unbalanced data set. So if there is a bias in the data set, you cannot expect the artificial intelligence that was trained on that to be unbiased. It will inherit inevitably the same bias. And actually, it will be amplified. So I'll let you read this. Maybe I will leave a copy of the slides, but definitely there are many online references on these problems, and they are very good, important topics of research these days. Okay, so can we use those in science? Definitely, large language models have revolutionized natural language processing, human language. But we discovered that they also have a significant potential behind language tasks. They offer the capability to analyze vast amount of data, big data, identify patterns, and generate hypotheses in scientific research. We will see why and how. Well, because large language models themselves are the product of big data analysis. So you have a tool that's been developed and trained on so many billions of, and actually is functioning on so many billions of parameters that can be more trained on specific domains and exploit the human language capability to relate context between each other so that you can apply to another domain. For example, LLMs can assist with literature reviews, yes, trend identification, hypothesis generation in scientific studies. Let's start analyzing some examples. Definitely, for example, vast amount of scientific literature. You can think how many papers are being published every day? Who knows? Can you read all of them? Even if you just concentrate on your own focus of research. Yes, these days we have a lot of indexes, search engines. They help a lot. But definitely reading, I definitely suggest every new scientist or PhD student to read at least one good paper a week. At least. Or maybe later on you can try to read at least one a day. But definitely you cannot read so many each day. And why not we use those language models to read for us and make summary? Why not? That's not cheating. I'm just, amplifying my capability to be aware of how science is moving, every day. And consider that somebody will do it. So if you don't do it, you will be slower because you will read one paper per week. Other people will be able to make summaries of maybe few papers per day. So it's an order of magnitude, right? Also, you can extract key information because summary, yes, but actually you can try to focus on what is actually the result of the paper. There are some plugins that you can use on ChatGPT that read any PDF, and then you can ask questions about the paper. And you can just make what is the research question of this paper? What is the result, the main result? How this result can be verified? Which evidence supports the results? So you as a scientist, you know how to make questions, right? So I'm not saying that if you use ChatGPT, you are a scientist. No, you need to be a scientist in order to do science anyway. And definitely it could also be used as suggesting potential research direction. Why not? Like, since it's a language model, you can have just an assistant to talk to. I make a little story here. I do computer programming, right? So we as programmers, we know the very good and efficient tool, which is the duck, a little duck that we put in our desk. So while we program, we make algorithm, and then afterwards we need to explain to the duck how the algorithm works. It's an object, right? It's like talking to a bottle or to a glass. But definitely that helps us to understand what we have done. And so instead of talking to a duck, which is a passive object, why not talking to a large language model? But remember not to be thrown away over the tangent of the discussion. You need to be control of the discussion, definitely. So in this way, why not using not just in computer science, but also on research? You can do brainstorming, basically. You can do brainstorming any time of the day with such models. You don't have to ask an appointment. Yes, definitely, it's a much better, a nice experience to do a brainstorming with humans. I know. Many good ideas of my research came from discussion with the humans while doing brainstorming sessions. And so this way will not be the same, but can maybe put a seed in your mind on doing something new in some fields. Let's try what else can be done. In data analysis, well, you can actually apply these models to any phenomena that can be modeled as a series of internal dependencies. What that means? Well, a series of symbols. If these symbols, like words, are there in each position because of previous words, and in case of word embedding, is a non-causal system because it's also using the next word, right? In physics, you cannot do that. In physics, everything needs to be a causal system, not casual, causal, okay? So that means that you cannot predict using the future, right? You can only say, you can only do analysis of your time series, so far, what happened, to make the best prediction. Yeah. As every good experimenter knows, the best predictions, that's just the moving average, probably, of what you already been doing so far. Well, large language model alike can help you to go better than the moving average. Many people have started to use it, for example, in finance to predict values of assets, or in climate analysis, weather, and other things that we're going to see. Also, you can use to make processing, interpreting complex and big data sets. Yes, you can actually give with another plugin to these models very long, many rows Excel file. You take this file, you give it to the LLM, and then you say, you ask questions. And you start saying, can I have an histogram of such and such column? Yes, and he will draw it for you. Or maybe, which one is the most important feature of these many columns related to the output? And it will do it for you. So it's like talking to a data analysis assistant on your desk, which can do many clever things, but you have to make the right questions. If you don't do the right question, you will get rubbish. Also, let's see, identify correlations, patterns, outliers. Why not? So you want to correlate variables between each other. You do some measurement in your laboratory, and you put everything in a single Excel file, and then try to use these models to find for correlations. Maybe this is mostly useful in the first part of the experiment, where you want to have an idea. Afterwards, if you find any correlation, then you can go back to the statistical analysis, as it should be done in a scientific research effort, right? But at least you can explore, you can do some, again, some brainstorming using a generic statistical assistant. For example, anomaly detection is very important to be able to extract from a data series. Anomaly detection means whatever is distance from the overall statistical population of my samples. Outliers, for example, or other kinds of, in a multidimensional space. Basically, you have a population of samples that are living around, they concentrate in a specific subspace, and then you may have some samples that are very far away from the population. Those are the outlier, and you might want to search for them. Maybe it's a phenotype of a gene or something you are searching, and the main population is just the main cell mixture, and that outlier is a living cell that has a specific behavior, and then you want to investigate why. Again, when you try to see preliminary anomaly detection, then you go back to statistical analysis and try to understand why this is an anomaly, why this is an outlier. Also pattern recognition, yes, images. Radiologists are starting to use these methods. Also macroscopy images, searching for specific pathologies or in tissues, or any scientific scientific photography application can be actually used in this, because the patterns can also be a correlation, which may be spatial, bidimensional correlation in an image, and temporal, which means you have many frames over time, like a movie, and so you want to make correlation between things moving at different times, different spaces. So you may do spatial temporal correlation. And also forecasting and predictive analytics, as I told you before, in the context of causal systems or symbol systems, or for example in genetics. In genetics, you have a string of symbols. While you analyze a genomic string, you don't care who comes first, who comes late. Yes, I'm sure there is an importance of which gene comes first another. Okay. But definitely a chromosome, you can look at it as in an overall sequence of symbols. So that's a perfect application of a language model. Or let's not call it a language model, large genetic model, LGM probably. And so why not take the full human genome and retrain an LLM with that data? That's another research project, right? And then you can definitely use this system to do some data-driven so-called decisions. Decisions where you miss the model, you miss the scientific reference or the physical model of the mathematical model of your experiment, since you are exploring a new edge of research. So most of the time you don't have any model at all, right? So the only thing you have is data, is samples from your experiments. So the question is, can I take decision just looking at data before I get the model working? So in this way, again, with the care and very accurate attention on what you're doing, you can try to make decision just looking at data. Okay. Well, let's go for examples. Drug discovery. That's a May 23 article. Well, actually, it's a kind of a short letter, but it's a correspondence in Nature. The question is, how will generative AI disrupt data science in drug discovery? Disrupt. So it's a big word. Well, yes, because basically people are starting, scientists are starting to analyze the chemical structures, proteins, genes, mRNA, even gene expression sequences or cellular, for example, in the cell, because we like, the complexity of the cell. How many processes are depending on each other? So try to understand the sequence of functionality, the pathways, for example. Also, in drug discovery, they can help and assist to virtual screening and drug target interaction, because you don't want to kill too many animals, right? So you can build up a virtual model, like a digital twin of your biosystem, of your organism, and stimulate with virtual sequences. That can be, again, genetic, proteomic, whatever. So it's really a revolution in drug discovery. And I'm sure that you can heard from the news, right, that many researchers are starting to use these tools. Computational biology, yes. Protein folding, the major problem of protein folding prediction. Alpha fold, another kind of artificial intelligence, which is not a language model, from another company, DeepMind, that now is owned by Google. It actually solved a large, difficult protein folding problem for the first time last year. And DeepMind is going to publish the largest protein folding prediction database online for free. So you, as a researcher, can input an amino acid sequence and get your the best protein prediction done by this artificial intelligence. Also, prediction of protein to protein interaction, because protein interact in space, three-dimensional space. So again, this is an analysis of series of phenomena that has internal dependency. Gene expression analysis, genomic research. And these are 3 examples of papers that I found. Large language model generate functional protein sequence across diverse families, July 22. Protein-protein interaction extraction approach based on large pre-trained language model and adversarial training. This is October. It was published in March, but definitely the research is at 21. Evolutionary scale prediction of atomic level protein structure with a language model. See, this is Science, March 23. So it's up to you. You want to use these tools or not? Or you want to be the boomer of science? I am a boomer. It's okay. So new PhD generation, new PhD students generation, they're going to use these tools, and they will hopefully help science to achieve better results. Let's give a little bit in the field of physics, climate change, climate modeling. Yes, because climate is a physical phenomenon that has a series of events that have an internal dependency. The weather today depends on the weather of yesterday, correct? Also, studying the climate over the years, which is different than doing weather prediction. And so studying the temperature, how temperature changes, and possibly what kind of impact can have in the overall environmental model. And so there are physicists that are studying and that are using these models to do this kind of studies. So I didn't actually went through many scientific fields, which I mean, it's up to you. You are a PhD student or so, and it's your job to apply to your own domain. If you're a physicist, you're a computer scientist, or you're a biologist, you are a medical doctor. It's up to you, because you need to see in your domain what is that phenomena that is a series of events that has an internal dependency. Okay, but don't forget this, which is the importance of domain expertise. Domain knowledge is needed, okay? It's a conditio sine qua non to use large language models. You cannot do protein sequence analysis or protein folding prediction if you don't know what is a protein, right? If you don't never seen any protein folding problem before. These tools, they're supposed to augment our expertise, not replace us. I don't believe that this new technology is going to replace anybody. There will be new jobs, because people that know how to use them, they will go fast in career. They will definitely be more productive, and they will publish more papers. I'm telling you, it's not being replaced. Okay, you actually, if you don't use it, you will be replaced by those people that use it. And definitely, you cannot do science with the large language model if you are not a scientist, because you don't know how science can be achieved. Like Galileo experimented for us and opened the long history of science centuries ago. There are some challenges, there are limitations, obviously. You cannot adapt large language model for all scientific tasks of research. You need to be sure that can be used in your domain. So do your own research. Try to search if anybody else, what is the state of art in your domain with large language model? Can I fine tune? Can I fine tune these models to my domain? Can I use pre-trained models and then do a little bit of training specifically for what I'm doing in my laboratory? So it needs to be think about. And definitely be aware that these LLMs, they have hallucinations. What that means? Well, hallucination is exactly what happened to us. They invent things. Mostly in linguistic, this happened very well. So if you ask ChatGPT, give me some reference to the science of anti-gravity, it will actually respond that there is an anti-gravity force, and then there are some papers being published in such and such with the specific citation, they do not exist. If you go to Scopus and search for that specific paper, you will never find it. So they're dangerous for this reason, because they can hallucinate. As I told you before, be aware of dangers and risks. So take it with the, with the tools, whenever you're going to use these tools in your research. And by the way, this whole webinar abstract and slides content were created with the help of ChatGPT. Okay, thank you very much. I'm open for question now.
Thank you, Professor De Gasperis. Thank you for the amazing webinar you show us. So please, if there are questions, please just unmute yourself or write it in the chat.
Please.
Meanwhile, if I can just, sorry, if you can just take a consideration about it. Say, I have a master's degree in pharmaceutical biotechnologies, and among the other lessons and exams, there were one about rational, rational projection of drugs. So they try to teach us how to project and think about a drug in a rational way using tools and so using these technologies and making something like you talk about with protein interaction, small molecule and proteins interaction, and I think is definitely the future of our kind of studies, because other way is not possible to try every small molecule on cells and next go on with in vitro technologies and so on. So yeah, definitely, I think is the future. So we must learn how to use them.
That's true.
We
That's
must.
true. Actually, we are learning how to use it. There is so-called the prompt engineering, which is a hype word basically, but it's like how do you precisely generate a text for questions? So maybe our students should not learn how to give an answer, but they should learn how to produce questions. Because if you generate the wrong question, you're going to have a wrong answer. So it's definitely I think in my experience over these latest few months, what I've learned is it's like practicing a new language. Is when you learn English or something or another second language. If you don't talk, you don't, you can read so many books on English, but you have to talk it, right? So practicing, you trying to understand how can be better suited to your domain. So you need to spend some time, definitely. So it should be part of PhD training, I think.
Yeah,
Some
I'm
kind
agree.
of course on trying to make your own method, your own questions, and your own library of questions. So
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, I'm agree. Thank you. Yeah, Professor Feti, please.
So Giovanni, fascinating and scaring talk. I fully agree
Hope not.
with what you said. Fascinating because it's a very potent tool that used properly could really change our world. And scaring because, as you know, if something bad can be done with these things, will be done. A lot of the research that was started from several people then became dangerous for humanity already. And in my opinion, for our generation, we were the first generation probably to be exposed day by day to computers and new means. And so we are in the age in which we understand both aspects of our life. But certainly, I would say that we are vaccinated against misuse of these technologies. What I appreciated from your talk is that you were very, very balanced, saying what is good and what is bad. I think that this is absolutely important for the young generation because the message for them as a scientist, not only as a person, but especially as a scientist, is that you have to be skeptic. You should not believe to your own data. You have also always to look for a different explanation of what you have. And the danger here is that somebody else will decide for you. And as an example, I don't know, Giovanni, if you agree, when we old people read the papers, we are skeptic and we always try to find something that doesn't sound well. I don't think that is the same for you, just because of lower experience, not because you are different from us, but because your experience is lower, and maybe you do not recognize if something is already been described, or it's wrong, or whatever. And now there is a plethora of new journals that are behaving not in the right way. So, Giovanni, since you have been very balanced in this, what is the best, say, way to defend ourselves from this? Because I think that it's a very potent tool, and we need to take advantage of that. But how shall we avoid the disadvantages?
Yes, indeed, we are now in the era of predator editors that keep pushing us to publish anything. But I always suggest to my collaborators or PhD students that they should start to do review as soon as possible, because doing review of papers written from other people, you can actually start to build your own sense of criticism and try to be more balanced and trying to, as you said, to try to prove everything that is in the paper in a correct scientific way. So again, doing a reviewer is learning a language, is practicing a language. You cannot be a good reviewer in one day. You need to review many papers. So that's a very important part of a scientist, because if you don't review work from other people, you cannot review yourself. Sometimes you just have to change hat and make yourself to a distance from what you have just done, and wear the clothes of a reviewer. And what will the viewer say about what I've done today? So is that well-founded, well-grounded? Is robust? It can be applied in many cases, or there are exceptions. There are, as you said, another models or explanations. So these tools can help on that. Again, there may be also malicious usage of these tools, because people actually they're trying to start to use this for writing and to submitting papers generated by large language models. But then they will not be able to do any science, because the language model can only generate what is already known, cannot generate new things, can help you to discover correlations, can help you to do some forecasting, but definitely cannot invent anything.
Yeah, Giovanni, don't you think that there is a problem with this plethora of new journals that we have around? I have the feeling that some of them are really out of control. Also from my own experience, because I was involved, I mean, they asked me to be involved in one of these new journals, aggressive journals, and I was in without even approving this. And since they sent me papers that I had to review after the work done by others, papers that were not in my expertise, papers that were clinical papers instead of basic science papers. So I complained all the time, and I had the feeling that I was talking with a machine, because I never received two letters with the same signature. They were all different people. So I decided to give up. I was clear with them. They disappeared, fortunately. And my suggestion is still to go for established journals that are there since many, many years, that started their activities before this overgrowth of new journals, because the old style journals are very well controlled. I understand that for young people it's easy to publish in the new aggressive journals, but some of them will disappear. So the paper will count nothing. And also sometimes you publish things that are not good quality just because they accept.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this is one of the current problem that we have.
Mm.
And we will have more in the future. So the problem is not the technology, but how you will be able to use the technology.
Very true. In my field, I can only talk for my field. For example, I think it's not well valued the role of the research engineer. What is a research engineer? It's somebody that actually make things work and function. Okay, so there should be one research engineer at least at each department. And the problem is that these research engineers don't actually work at the level that can publish anything, okay? But the scientist that is using research engineer skills will make the paper, and most of the time, this paper cannot be reproducible. So what I actually do in my reviews is, in order to discover the skill of the research engineer there, I always say, what is the data set? Have you published the data set? Have you published the open source software that you've been using to analyze data? Where did you publish it? So before the paper is published, there are many, many other things to be published that are the tools that you use to do that. And that work cannot be done by a research engineer in my domain.
They can manipulate also the raw data, I think. That's the point. When I was young, they called it data massage, and they changed something to fit with your hypothesis. So there are a lot of dangers. That's the problem. And one of my suggestions, I'm sure that Giovanni will agree, is that your work, guys, is not only at the bench. I know that the bench work takes a lot of time to you, but it is technical work. You need to read papers. You need to develop your criticism. We need some, I say, positive skepticism. Positive in the sense that you are not there to destroy the work of others, but you are there to understand. And always ask a question opposite to what you are reading there. Because in this way, you develop the critical sense that you need for your work. So you need to find time to read. You start with simple papers, and then you get to more and more complicated papers. It's absolutely important, because in this way you are protecting yourself from this danger that Giovanni explained very, very well.
Okay, thank you.
We should hear from the young people what they think. If they are happy, if they are safe with this.
Yeah, come on, confess. Have you been using ChatGPT at all anytime? Raise your hand.
I never use it, but I hear a lot of times to talk about ChatGPT. And if I remember well, there were also some very well-known people that say that it's very dangerous to use ChatGPT, not only for the reason you talk as, but also they say, I don't know, probably there was also a kind of revolution, if I remember well, in Hollywood about ChatGPT, because the actors and the people who make sceneggiature, sorry, I don't know how to say it, were scared about ChatGPT. if this technology can replace their role.
They will lose their job since
Yeah,
they
yeah,
use
exactly. I
ChatGPT.
think
That's
what's
the
the
problem. So
Again,
this is not a good news for people who
they need to
are
be more clever, because the
exactly,
generative models can only generate what is already known.
exactly.
So they've seen the stories of every possible science fiction novels, so they can generate similar novels, but not new novels.
Exactly. Yes, but if you don't know the real knowledge, you will not recognize the bad one. That's the point. So my feeling is that there is a gap in the young generation. We also had it. It was not easy for us, but we had less material to read. Now you have a lot of the material, and it's very difficult to understand which one is a good one. So this is the problem. So we were more limited. And I remember seminal papers, I still remember them word by word, because they were few but top level papers that were good for many years. And now I'm lost. And, yeah. Also because there are a number of new authors that we don't know. For instance, there are a lot of authors that I never see to meetings. Whereas the previous authors, you met them every year at international meetings, you knew one by one, and now there are many authors that you don't know who they are. So the message is use it. It's a great technology. It will improve a lot, but be careful. Be very careful. Your mind is superior to the machine.
Indeed, I do agree.
Yeah, perfectly. Thank you. Yes, Adam, please. Adam?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for the presentation. I found it very interesting. Your last point, you brought up the hallucinations of the AI, and I thought that was very interesting, but I don't really understand like how it would work. Is it understood at all, or is it a mystery? Would you mind explain that to me?
Good question. Thank you. Well, OpenAI, which is the company behind GPT, they actually never published how this works. I doubt they know how it works, because they basically have used it as a black box. And they used a huge humongous number of people online. They paid people to give a reinforcement learning quality of the answers. So it's called human-based reinforcement learning, which basically means for every question given to the system, the answer could be many kind of answers. The humans had to select the best answer that was most compatible with the given ethical guidelines and the human-like answer. So basically, these are generative models that can generate anything as far as probabilistically sound and grammatically correct. So hallucination is just the effect of generating something which is compatible with the probability of the system, of whatever the system can generate, but that is not referring to anything real in a real world. So it's actually understudy the hallucination effect of generative systems. It's not yet understood, but you need to know that does exist. So you need to do double checking whenever there is any answer from such a system. So my challenge for you would be: do you think that everything that I said in this seminar is true? Maybe it's all fake, because I used the ChatGPT to generate content. So you should go on Scholar
Yeah,
and
for sure.
check whatever I said.
For the things that it makes up, though, is it being creative? Is it creating original ideas, or is it like where is it getting these things that are completely made up from?
That's a philosophical question. Creativity is, maybe we can imagine creativity at different levels. So like at the zero level, maybe like a mechanical generative property. And then you can have a level 1 where a system can generate content that is like an interpolation of human content, right? For example, if you see in those mid-journey image generation systems, you actually have to say, okay, make an image of an avatar in the style of Van Gogh. So it will make an image because he knew all of the picture from Van Gogh. So it's interpolating. So that's kind of creativity is level 1. I think humans are possess a higher creativity level. Not all of humans, I have to say. You have to be a creative human, right? To be very creative. And I think this system still miss that higher level of creativity. That's the best answer I can give you to you.
No, that's very interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So if are not questions, I think we can leave, also because we are late. So thank you again, Professor De Gasperis, and we see the next week for the next TMS.
Thank you,
Bye.
Chiara.
And
Thank you,
you.
everybody, to
Bye-bye.
participate.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.